Maxon's hands trembled as the message blinked on his screen. It was official, a communiqué from the Galactic Council. He blinked, unsure of what he had just read. He thought it was some sort of joke, a scam or a prank pulled off by some alien factions with a sick sense of humor. But this wasn't funny. "Maxon Dario," the message began in cold, mechanical tones, "you are hereby informed that you have inherited the entire estate of the late King Alistair of the Zothar Empire. This includes all holdings, assets, and the King's daughter, Lyra." Alistair, a sharp intake of breath stopped him. What? He stared at the screen, unable to process the words. He must have misread it. Inherited the late king and a daughter? The thought was absurd. Maxon was a simple human. He wasn't royalty. He wasn't even a part of the galactic elite. He barely scraped by in his lowly work on the fringes of the galaxy. A random smuggler, a few odd jobs here and there, a life barely worth remembering. How could he inherit something so grand? His eyes darted to the small hollow terminal on the side of his desk, the one that usually only buzzed when it was someone desperate to sell him something, old tech, star maps, or even weapons. But this was something entirely different. This wasn't a junk offer or a scam. This was official. Then, as if to mock his confusion, the message continued. "The Galactic Council extends its deepest condolences. We, of course, expect you to honor the legacy of the late King Alistair. His passing has left a significant void in the Zothar Empire, and as his only remaining family, the responsibility now falls to you, in accordance with his will." Maxon's heart pounded. He felt his world tilt under him. King Alistair, the Zothar Empire. It felt like an elaborate hoax, some sort of bizarre joke. The Zothar Empire was one of the largest galactic empires, known for its massive fleet, immense wealth, and terrifying reputation. They ruled entire star systems. And now, somehow, a human from Earth was their new ruler. The screen flickered, and a hologram appeared in front of him. A small, floating image of a man in elaborate robes, his face cold and unfeeling. It was a member of the Galactic Council, the same council that governed across countless planets. The voice of the hologram boomed out in a condescending tone. "Maxon Dario, we are aware that you may find this inheritance peculiar. It is, after all, a most unusual situation. However, the late King Alistair's final wishes were clear. And as you have no doubt guessed, the ugly daughter, Lyra Alistair, is now your responsibility. As his heir, you will be expected to oversee her care, among other duties." Maxon's breath caught in his throat. The daughter, the ugly daughter. This wasn't just some inheritance, it was a humiliation. His mind raced. This was a setup. The Galactic Council was laughing at him. The hologram continued, its voice dripping with mockery. "Yes, we all know what you must be thinking. A human inheriting the daughter of King Alistair. And not just any daughter, but Lyra, whose looks have been a point of amusement within the royal courts. But fret not, she is not the only thing you will inherit. You will also receive the royal estate, all its wealth, and the king's assets." Maxon's jaw clenched. He felt a rush of anger. The ugly daughter. He wasn't just inheriting a planet's worth of riches, but he was being handed someone's embarrassment. "Your arrival will be expected shortly," the hologram added, its tone taking on a more serious note. "The royal planet awaits your presence, and you are required to arrive within the next 72 hours. Do not keep us waiting." Before Maxon could process. "Anything else?" The hologram flickered out, leaving only a soft hum in the air. His mind spun, his heart racing. The idea of flying to the royal planet, meeting a woman who had been ridiculed for her appearance, inheriting an entire empire, none of it made sense. But it didn't matter. He had to go. This wasn't a choice. The council's message wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Maxon's gaze shifted to the window of his small spaceport room. The stars blinked in the distance, a stark reminder of how vast and unknown the galaxy was. What could possibly lie ahead? And what did the Council mean by ugly? Was it just their words, mocking her for some perceived flaw? Or was there something deeper, something more sinister hidden beneath the surface? He couldn't let his mind wander too far. He had to focus. He would need a plan, but first he had to figure out how to get there. His tiny starship wasn't nearly equipped to handle the journey to the royal planet. He needed proper funding, better equipment, and perhaps most importantly, he needed answers. But even as he prepared for the unknown, one question gnawed at him more than the rest. Why? Had King Alistair chosen him? A human. There were plenty of wealthy, powerful individuals in the galaxy, surely, and yet Maxon, a nobody, was now at the center of this absurd inheritance. The Council didn't seem to care about that. They just expected him to step in and play his part. Maxon clenched his fists. No, he wouldn't be a pawn. Not in their game. He would get to the bottom of this. He would find out exactly what was going on and why. The next few hours were a blur. Maxon secured a larger, more capable ship, one that could handle the journey to the royal planet. He packed his few belongings, including the small, tattered journal that had kept his thoughts over the years. There was no time to waste. The clock was ticking. He had less than 3 days to prepare for an encounter that could change everything. The human part of him, doubtful, uncertain, and afraid, wanted to run. He didn't belong in this world of royalty and galactic power. But the other part, the one that always refused to back down, knew that he had no choice. He had to face whatever was coming. Maxon stepped out of his room and into the cold metallic corridors of the spaceport. His boots echoed off the walls, the sound a constant reminder of how small he was in this massive universe. The ship would be ready soon, and when it was, he would leave everything he knew behind. Maxon's ship was hurtling through the void of space, the stars becoming streaks of light as he jumped from one hyperlane to another, racing toward the royal planet. He sat in the cockpit, his hands firmly gripping the controls. His mind, however, was a whirlwind of questions. What had he gotten himself into? The Galactic Council's message hadn't exactly been welcoming, and now he was on a one-way trip to an unknown fate. The royal planet wasn't just any planet. It was the heart of the Zothar Empire, the seat of power for one of the most influential empires in the galaxy. He was a simple human, with no royal blood, no connections to this vast world of politics and treachery. What could they possibly want from him? The ship's autopilot engaged, and Maxon leaned back in his seat, his mind returning to the message he had received. The words replayed in his mind. You are hereby informed that you have inherited the entire estate of the late King Alistair of the Zothar Empire. This includes all holdings, assets, and the king's daughter, Lyra Alistair. His thoughts turned to Lyra, the ugly daughter. The council had made it clear that her appearance was a point of ridicule in the royal courts. But who were they to judge? What did they know of beauty or worth? He couldn't help but feel a little anger rise within him. He had no idea what to expect when he met her, but somehow he knew that there was more to this situation than met the eye. Maxon's gaze shifted to the stars outside the cockpit window. The vastness of space surrounding him. How could a simple human like him, from a backwater planet, inherit the legacy of a king? He had worked his whole life to survive in the fringes of the galaxy, just another face in the crowd. But this was something else entirely. It felt like a cosmic joke. And yet, the Galactic Council wasn't laughing. He glanced at the console, checking the coordinates. It wouldn't be long now before he arrived at the royal planet. His pulse quickened. The council had made it clear that his presence was expected within 72 hours. What would he find when he arrived? Would Lyra be what the council had described, or would she be someone entirely different? The message had made her sound like an afterthought, an insignificant pawn in the grand scheme of the Empire's politics. But Maxon couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than just her appearance. She wasn't some accessory to be discarded. She was the daughter of a king. She had to be more than the council let on. Just then, a soft ping sounded from the ship's communication system. Maxon's fingers flew over the console, answering the call. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of a woman. She was strikingly beautiful, with piercing green eyes and long dark hair that cascaded over her shoulders like a waterfall. But it wasn't her beauty that caught Maxon's attention. It was the weight of sadness that seemed to hang over her, the deep sorrow in her eyes. "Maxon Dario," the woman said in a soft yet firm voice. "I am Lyra Alistair, daughter of the late King Alistair. I presume you've received the Council's message." Maxon swallowed hard. This was it, the moment he had been preparing for. He couldn't help but be struck by her presence. Even through the hologram, there was something about her, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. Her gaze was intense, not mocking or dismissive as the Council had been, but full of uncertainty. It was as if she, too, was caught up in a game that she didn't fully understand. "Yes," Maxon replied, his voice betraying a hint of hesitation. "I received..." His voice betraying a hint of hesitation. "I received the message, but I have to admit, I'm a little confused." She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "I understand," she said softly. "I don't expect you to understand everything at once. I didn't expect any of this either." Maxon furrowed his brow. "So you're okay with all of this? The inheritance? The Council's, well, treatment of you?" Lyra's eyes flashed with something that could have been anger, but it was gone before Maxon could fully interpret it. She looked away, her gaze drifting towards the distant stars outside the window. For a moment, she seemed lost in thought, and then, as if shaking off the weight of her emotions, she met his eyes once more. "I didn't have a choice," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Neither of us does. This inheritance isn't just about money or land. It's about power, control, and the Council..." She paused, her words heavy with meaning. "The Council has its own agenda. You'll see soon enough." Maxon leaned forward, curiosity piqued. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Lyra hesitated for a moment, as if weighing whether or not to continue. Finally she spoke, her voice low. "The Council didn't tell you everything. They didn't tell you why you were chosen, why you were picked to inherit my father's estate." Maxon's heart raced. "What are you saying?" Lyra's eyes grew darker. "My father wasn't just a king. He was a part of something ancient. The Zothar Empire, as it stands now, is only the surface of what he controlled. There are secrets beneath the surface, secrets the Council has been trying to bury for centuries." Maxon's mind raced. What was she talking about? What kind of secrets? Lyra's expression hardened. "The Council wants to keep those secrets hidden, and they will do anything to make sure you don't find out." Before Maxon could respond, the hologram flickered, and Lyra's image was replaced with a message from the ship's navigation system. "Approaching Royal Planet. Estimated time of arrival, 30 minutes. Maxon stared at the screen, his thoughts a chaotic swirl. The Royal Planet, his inheritance, Lyra's cryptic words, the Council's mocking tone. Everything was starting to feel much more dangerous than he had anticipated. "What do you want from me, Lyra?" Maxon asked, his voice strained. "Why am I here? What's the real reason I was chosen?" Her gaze softened, but there was still a wariness in her eyes. "I want you to understand that this isn't just a game. This is real. And if we don't work together, we'll both fall into the hands of the Council. They think they can control us, but they're wrong. They don't know what they're dealing with." Maxon's mind was spinning, but there was one thing he knew for sure. He wasn't going to let the council win. He wasn't going to let them control his fate or Lyra's. He would get to the bottom of whatever twisted game they were playing. "I'll be there soon," he said, determination hardening his voice. "And when I get there, we'll figure this out." Lyra nodded, her expression unreadable. "I'll be waiting." The hologram flickered off, and Maxon's ship continued its approach toward the royal planet. His thoughts raced as he gazed out at the shimmering expanse of stars. Whatever awaited him on that planet, he knew one thing. It was going to be more dangerous and more complicated than he ever imagined. Maxon's ship shuddered as it descended into the atmosphere of the royal planet. The towering spires of the palace, more magnificent than anything he had ever seen, loomed closer, their dark shadows stretching across the city. It was a place of power, ancient and foreboding, a place that whispered of secrets buried deep beneath the surface. The transmission from the Galactic Council still flashed on the console, a constant reminder that the game was far from over. The ship's alarms continued to blare, the warning of an incoming message ringing in Maxon's ears. He knew this was it. This was the moment when everything would change. What did the council want now? Maxon reluctantly opened the communication channel. The screen flickered, and the stern face of a council official appeared. Her expression was neutral, but Maxon could sense the tension radiating off her. He recognized her. Elira Voss, the same woman who had sent the initial inheritance. Notice, her cold eyes seemed to bore into him, as if she could already see the questions swirling in his mind. "Maxon Dario," she said, her voice as clinical as always. "You are approaching the royal palace. I trust you've received our previous communications and are aware of the consequences of your actions." Maxon's pulse quickened, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I'm aware, yes," he replied, keeping his voice steady. "But you didn't exactly tell me what's going on. You've been very vague about everything." Elira's gaze remained fixed on him, her lips curling into a faint smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "You don't need to know everything. Maxon, the important thing is that you've arrived. The council has high expectations for you and your inheritance." She emphasized the last word as though it was something foreign to her. "Right," Maxon said, trying to suppress the anger building inside him. "And you expect me to just play along?" "Of course," Elira replied smoothly. "It's in your best interest. You've been chosen for a reason. You will understand everything in time." Maxon's fingers tightened around the console, his frustration boiling over. "I don't think you understand," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I'm not some pawn in your game. I'm here because of Lyra, her father's legacy, and I won't let you control us." Elira's smile faltered for just a moment, and Maxon saw something in her eyes, a flicker of annoyance, maybe even fear. But just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. She straightened, her posture rigid. "You may believe you have control, Maxon, but you are mistaken," she said coldly. "You will do as the council commands. And if you do not, well, you will soon learn why it is a grave mistake. You defy us." The screen went black before Maxon could respond, the oppressive silence of the ship settling in around him. His mind raced with questions. What was she talking about? What had he walked into? The council's cryptic warning only deepened his suspicions. They weren't just interested in controlling him, they were interested in something else entirely. Maxon glanced out of the cockpit window as the palace drew closer. The city below was a sprawling labyrinth of buildings, all gleaming with wealth and power. But there was something unsettling about it. A sense of unease gnawed at him as he saw the guards stationed at every corner, their eyes cold and unblinking as they watched the ship's descent. The palace itself was a massive structure, its black stone walls jagged and imposing like the skeleton of some ancient creature. It rose high into the sky, its towers crowned with gold, but there was something strange about the way the palace seemed to cast a shadow over everything around it. The air felt heavier here, as if something dark and ancient lurked beneath the surface. The ship's landing gear engaged, and Maxon could hear the faint hiss of the engines as they powered down. He had arrived, but what awaited him here was still a mystery. He stepped out of the cockpit, his boots clicking on the metal floor of the ship. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. The Council's cryptic messages, Lyra's warnings, and the tension in the air had only increased his anxiety. But there was no turning back now. Maxon made his way to the airlock, his footsteps echoing through the quiet ship. The moment the door opened, he was met with a blast of cold air and the sharp scent of the planet's atmosphere. His eyes narrowed. As he stepped onto the landing platform, guards, clad in dark uniforms, stood at attention, their eyes trained on him. They were silent, their presence almost suffocating. One of the guards approached, his expression unreadable. "You are expected," he said in a flat voice, his tone giving nothing away. Maxon nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "Lead the way." The guards didn't speak again, but they fell in line around him as they escorted him through the palace gates. The palace loomed above him, its dark stone walls giving way to a labyrinth of corridors and grand hallways. Maxon could feel the weight of the place pressing down on him, the air thick with secrets. The walls seemed to whisper, as though the palace itself had a life of its own. They passed through several large doors before arriving at a massive chamber. The walls were adorned with intricate tapestries depicting the Zothar Empire's history, but there was something eerie about them. The faces of the people in the tapestries were all twisted, their expressions frozen in fear. At the far end of the room stood a large throne, empty but imposing. Maxon felt a chill run down his spine as he approached the throne. The guards stepped back, but their eyes remained fixed on him. "Wait here," one of the guards ordered, his voice cold and impersonal. Maxon didn't have time to question it. Before the large doors at the far end of the room swung open, a woman stepped through, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Lyra Alistair stood before him. Her appearance was nothing like what he had imagined. She wasn't ugly. She wasn't even close. The rumors the council had spread were nothing but lies, lies meant to strip her of her dignity. Her dark eyes met his with a mix of sadness and determination, her posture regal despite the uncertainty that seemed to hang around her like a veil. Maxon couldn't take his eyes off her. She was striking, her presence magnetic, and yet there was a vulnerability about her that sent a surge of protectiveness through him. "You made it," she said softly, her voice carrying across the room. Maxon nodded, his throat suddenly dry. "Lyra, Before he could continue, the sound of footsteps echoed through the room. A man entered, tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that seemed carved from stone. His eyes were cold, his expression unreadable. Maxon immediately recognized him as the royal advisor, the one who had been overseeing the inheritance process on behalf of the council. "Maxon Dario," the man said, his voice low and commanding. "It seems you finally arrived." Maxon straightened, meeting the man's gaze. "I'm here, but I have questions. I don't understand why I was chosen. Why me?" The royal advisor's lips curled into a thin smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You will understand in time, but for now your presence is required in the royal chambers. There are matters to discuss." Lyra's gaze flickered to the advisor, then back to Maxon. She didn't speak, but her eyes seemed to say everything. There was something off about the situation, something that neither of them was saying. Maxon's instincts told him to be cautious. There was more to this than just an inheritance. The council's cryptic warnings, Lyra's unsettling silence, and the royal advisor's cold demeanor all pointed to one thing: Danger. Led the way, Maxon said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. The advisor turned without a word, and the guards began to move, flanking Maxon on either side. The tension in the air was palpable, and Maxon couldn't shake the feeling that everything he had been told so far was a lie. The royal chambers awaited him, and with them, the truth. Maxon felt his heart pounding in his chest as the doors slammed, shut behind him. The sudden shift in the atmosphere felt like a trap, the oppressive air almost suffocating. His instincts screamed at him to act, to run, but there was nowhere to go. The shadows in the royal chamber stretched long, and the figure in the center remained hidden, their presence both commanding and unnerving. "Welcome," the voice whispered again. It echoed off the cold stone walls, sending a chill down Maxon's spine. "We've been expecting you." Maxon's breath hitched, his mind racing. Who was this? The voice wasn't familiar, but there was something unmistakable about the tone, something that felt almost ominous. He gripped the edge of his shirt tightly, trying to steady his nerves as the figure slowly emerged from the darkness. The shape stepped forward, its form slowly revealing itself. At first, Maxon couldn't quite make out the details, but as the figure drew closer, he saw it clearly. A tall, regal being draped in robes of black and silver, their face hidden by a hood. The air around them seemed to shimmer, almost like the very fabric of reality bent when they moved. "Who are you?" Maxon demanded, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. The figure said nothing for a long moment, standing motionless as if evaluating him. Maxon's gaze darted around the room, but there was no one else, just this mysterious presence watching him. Finally the figure spoke again, their voice soft but sharp. "I am the one who will tell you the truth about the inheritance, about Lyra, and about your place in all of this." Maxon's brow furrowed in confusion. "Lyra? What do you know about her?" The figure's hood tilted, and Maxon couldn't help but feel a twinge of discomfort at the way they regarded him. "Everything, Maxon Dario. Everything you need to know. I have been keeping from you." The last few words hung in the air, heavy, with unspoken meaning. Maxon took a step forward, his mind racing as the pieces of the puzzle scattered in his thoughts. What truth? What had he been kept from knowing? Suddenly, the figure threw back their hood, revealing their face. Maxon gasped in shock as he took in the features. This wasn't an alien he had expected to see. It was Lyra. But this wasn't the Lyra he had seen earlier. This version of her was different, aged and regal, her eyes sharp and full of knowledge, a far cry from the young woman he had met on the royal planet. "Lyra?" Maxon whispered, disbelief flooding his senses. "How is this possible?" She stepped closer, her movements fluid and deliberate, her eyes never leaving his. "I am Lyra Alistair," she said, her voice carrying a weight Maxon had never heard before. "But not the one you know. The truth about the inheritance is far more complicated than you think." Maxon stood frozen, trying to process what was happening. His mind raced with questions, but he couldn't form a single one coherent enough to speak. The person standing before him was Lyra, but she wasn't the same. There was something ancient and powerful about her, something that felt otherworldly. "What do you mean?" he finally managed, his voice hoarse. "You're not the Lyra I knew?" "No, I am not," she replied, a hint of sadness in her tone. "But I am her, just a version of her you have yet to meet." Maxon could barely comprehend her words. The Lyra he had grown to care for, the one who had been an unexpected ally, a symbol of everything the Council had wronged, was not the person standing before him now. But then, if she wasn't the Lyra he knew, who was she? And why did she look so much like her? Lyra seemed to read the confusion in his eyes and nodded slowly. "Let me explain." She took a deep breath, her gaze never wavering. "You see, the inheritance was not meant for you, not in the way you think." Maxon blinked, taken aback. "Then why—" "Because," she cut him off, her voice growing more intense, "it was never about you inheriting a kingdom. It was about you inheriting her." The words hung in the air, too heavy for Maxon to comprehend at first. "Her?" he echoed, his voice faltering. You mean Lyra, the woman I met?" Lyra nodded slowly, her eyes dark and knowing. "Yes, the real Lyra, the one who is more than just an heir to the throne, the one who has a destiny far beyond anything you could imagine." Maxon was stunned. His thoughts churned, trying to understand. He had thought the inheritance was a simple matter. Lyra's father's will had named him as the one to inherit her, and he had done so out of obligation. He had never imagined that there was more at stake. "What are you saying?" Maxon asked, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and confusion. The figure Lyra smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I am saying that the inheritance was never meant to give you a kingdom. It was meant to give you control over me." Maxon's heart stopped for a moment. "What? Control over you?" Lyra's smile deepened, almost sinister. "Yes, Maxon. The inheritance was not just a transfer of power, it was a bond that ties you to me, a bond that you cannot escape no matter how hard you try." The words hit him like a blow. He staggered backward, disbelief and panic rising in his chest. "No, this can't be real. What are you talking about?" Lyra took another step forward, her eyes gleaming with a sharp intensity. "You don't understand yet, do you? This inheritance isn't about wealth or power. It's about a legacy that has been passed down through generations. The Alistair bloodline is ancient, far older than you could ever know." Maxon felt his breath quicken as her words sank in. "What does that have to do with me?" "It has everything to do with you, Maxon," she said softly. "The Alistair bloodline is not just about royalty. It's about something much more powerful. The truth is, you are a part of it. Your bloodline, your heritage, has always been intertwined with ours. The Council knew this when they chose you." Maxon shook his head, struggling to understand. "But you don't feel it yet, do you?" she interrupted, her voice softer now, almost pitying. "The connection is there, Maxon. It always has been. It is in your blood. And now that you are tied to me, you will begin to understand. You will see the truth." Maxon stumbled back a step, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. "No, I didn't sign up for this. I just wanted to help. I wanted to protect her." Lyra's expression softened, though there was still a sharpness to her gaze. "I know. But the truth doesn't care about what we want. It only cares about what must be done." Maxon's head spun. The woman who had once been an ally, the woman he had tried to save, was now telling him that he was caught in something far greater than he could have imagined. He had never asked for any of this. He had never asked for the power, for the responsibility. And yet here he was, bound to it in ways he could not even begin to comprehend. "Now," Lyra said, her voice steady, "you must make a choice. Stay with me and learn the truth of your inheritance, or walk away and face the consequences of denying what is rightfully yours." Maxon stood motionless, torn between the two paths. The weight of the decision pressed on him, suffocating him. He had no answers, no way of knowing what would happen next. But one thing was certain: the story was far from over. The soldiers burst into the chamber like a wave, their boots echoing against the stone floor. Maxon's heart pounded in his chest as they leveled their weapons at him. His mind raced, thoughts clashing in his head like a violent storm. Who were these soldiers? What did they want? But in that moment, it didn't matter. The fact remained that they were there to stop him, or, worse, "Step away from her," the lead soldier barked, his voice cold and commanding. Maxon barely registered the order as his attention snapped to Lyra. She stood unmoving, her expression unreadable, like a statue made of stone. "Lyra!" Maxon shouted, his voice raw. "What is going on? Who are these people?" Lyra didn't respond. Immediately, her gaze focused solely on the soldiers, as if she was considering something deep inside her. Then, without warning, she spoke, her voice calm, yet heavy with authority. "You don't understand, Maxon," she said softly. "They're here because they know what I've been hiding, what we've been hiding." Maxon's chest tightened at her words, and he stepped back instinctively, his mind struggling to keep up with the flood of revelations. What had she been hiding? The soldiers. The truth. About the inheritance. About him. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in as the soldiers advanced on him. "Get back!" the soldier shouted again, his weapon raised as he aimed it directly at Maxon's chest. "Wait!" Lyra's voice cut through, the tension sharp and commanding. The soldiers froze, their eyes flicking to her in confusion. Maxon's pulse raced, his gaze locked on Lyra. "What do you mean, hiding? What's going on?" Lyra took a deep breath, and the air around them seemed to thrum with an energy Maxon couldn't quite place. "You're not the only one who has been deceived," she began, her words slow, deliberate. "The inheritance, the council, they all had plans for you, for me, for the Alistair bloodline. But it's more than that. It's about the legacy, Maxon, and you are a part of it, whether you like it or not." Maxon felt a chill crawl up his spine. "I don't want any part of this," he said fiercely, his voice filled with defiance. "I just want to know the truth, all of it. What do they want from me, and what does this have to do with the king's daughter?" Lyra's eyes flickered with a mix of sadness and something darker. "They want control, Maxon. The council, the ones who are pulling the strings. They want to control the power that lies within our bloodlines. They know about the inheritance, the bond that ties us together. But they've kept you in the dark about it, and now they've come to finish what they started." Maxon's mind was reeling. The pieces were finally starting to fit together, but the picture was far from clear. The council, the inheritance, the bloodline. His thoughts crashed together in a disorienting spiral. "You're saying they want to control us? All of us?" Lyra nodded gravely. "Yes, they've been manipulating the Alistair bloodline for centuries, using us as pawns in a game they've been playing for generations. And now they want to use you, Maxon. They think you're the key to everything." "Why me?" Maxon asked, the question barely escaping his lips before his voice faltered. "Why would they think I'm special?" "You are, Maxon," Lyra said softly, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver through him. "You're more than just a human. You're a part of the Alistair legacy. Your blood carries the same power as mine. The bond we share is more than just an inheritance. It's destiny." Maxon's breath caught in his throat. "Destiny." Before Lyra could respond, the soldiers moved again, their weapons drawn. The lead soldier stepped forward, a sneer on his face. "Enough of this. You've said enough, Princess. It's time to end this charade." Maxon's heart skipped a beat as the soldiers raised their weapons higher, ready to fire. But before they could act, Lyra moved with startling speed, her hand outstretched toward the soldiers. The air around her shimmered, and suddenly a wave of energy rippled through the room, knocking the soldiers back. Maxon stumbled, barely keeping his balance, as the force of the blast hit him like a tidal wave. The soldiers struggled to regain their footing, but it was clear that something had shifted in the air. The atmosphere was charged, and Maxon could feel the energy coursing through him, like a lightning storm trapped inside the walls of the chamber. "Stay back," Lyra commanded, her voice strong. The soldiers hesitated, clearly taken aback by the sudden display of power. Maxon watched in awe as she stood tall, her form radiating an almost ethereal strength. "Lyra, what is happening?" Maxon asked, his voice urgent. "What did you just do?" Lyra's eyes never wavered from the soldiers. "I did what needed to be done," she said, her voice cool and controlled. "They don't understand the power they're dealing with, but you will. You must understand, Maxon. The truth is more than just about the inheritance. It's about the power that flows through our blood. The blood of the Alistair family carries more than just royal status. It carries the potential for unimaginable power. Power that has been locked away for centuries. Power that the Council wants to use for their own gain." Maxon swallowed hard, his mind reeling with the implications of her words. "So, all of this, the inheritance, the marriage, it was all part of their plan?" Lyra nodded solemnly. "Yes. They wanted me to marry someone who could control the power, someone they could manipulate. But the bond between us, you and me, is not something they can control. It's something we must learn to harness, together." Maxon's head spun. "But how? I don't understand. I'm just a human. How can I possibly control this kind of power?" Lyra's gaze softened, though there was an undeniable strength in her eyes. "You may be human, Maxon, but your bloodline has always been connected to ours. You have the potential within you, but you have to be willing to accept it, to embrace it." Maxon's mind raced, but before he could respond, the lead soldier made a move, his hand resting on the weapon at his side. "Enough of this nonsense. Surrender, princess. You're outnumbered." But Maxon didn't hear the soldier's words. He was too focused on the feeling that had begun to stir within him, the feeling of something awakening deep inside him. It was as if the air around him was charged with an electric current, running through his veins, urging him to act. And then it hit him, the truth that had been hidden all along. "Lyra," he said slowly, his voice filled with determination, "I'm ready. Let's do this." Lyra's eyes widened, the faintest hint of a smile playing at the corner of her lips. "Are you sure?" Maxon nodded, his heart racing. "I'm ready to fight. For us." Before Lyra could respond, a brilliant light exploded from Maxon's chest, enveloping him in a blinding glow. The power surged through him, and he could feel it. The legacy that had been hidden, the bond that tied him to Lyra, all of it. In an instant, he understood what he had to do. As the soldiers attempted to fire, the light expanded outward, enveloping the room. The blast sent them stumbling backward, their weapons disintegrating in a flash of light. Maxon stood, bathed in the brilliance of the energy coursing through him, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The battle for control had begun. The massive figure stood at the entrance of the chamber, its outline pulsing with an unnatural energy. Shadows clung to it like armor, and its eyes, two burning suns, locked onto Maxon with focused malice. A terrible silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Lyra stepped forward slowly, her breath catching. "No, it can't be." Maxon, still glowing faintly from the energy awakening within him, turned to her. "What is that?" "It's the Sentinel," she whispered. "The final defense of the Galactic Council, or their executioner. If they ever lost control." The creature took a slow, deliberate step inside. With each movement, the temperature dropped. Its voice boomed without a mouth. Inside their minds. The bloodline must be contained. The anomaly neutralized. Order must be restored. Maxon's fingers twitched with the new power now surging through him, but his instinct screamed, "This isn't a fight you win with fists." The Sentinel wasn't just a machine. It was designed to suppress royal blood, to erase what it could. "Not control," Maxon whispered. "Why now? Why send this thing?" Lyra stepped beside him, eyes locked on the looming figure. "Because we broke the chain. You activated the bond, and now we're outside their control. We're unpredictable. And that scares them." Lyra nodded. "More than war. More than extinction." The Sentinel raised one clawed hand and struck. The blast hit like a comet, slamming into Maxon and Lyra, flinging them across the chamber. Stone cracked, dust filled the air, and Maxon barely managed to pull himself up, pain flashing through his ribs. But something had changed. The strike hadn't vaporized him. He looked down. The mark on his chest, the royal seal, was glowing, shielding him like a living barrier. Lyra was on her knees, bleeding from her temple. "Maxon!" she gasped. He staggered toward her. "We have to end this. Now!" She grabbed his hand, and as their skin touched, a pulse of light erupted between them. The floor beneath them cracked, lifting dust and debris in spirals. The sentinel paused, calculating, adjusting. Maxon looked into Lyra's eyes. "If we join powers, can we stop it?" "No," she said honestly, "but we can rewrite the system." He blinked. "Rewrite?" Lyra stood, stronger now, her voice firm. "The Council built the Sentinel with protocols bound to the Alistair Code, the Royal Line. That means we can access its core, not fight it, but change its command." "You mean hack it?" "In a way," she said, "but not with computers, with blood, with will." The Sentinel charged. Maxon and Lyra pressed their palms together. In that moment, their thoughts synchronized, their pain, their doubts, their dreams, the shared memories of every moment since he'd arrived. It all poured into one stream of pure intention, and Maxon saw it. The truth. The Alistair line had once been defenders of peace, but over generations, the Galactic Council turned them into puppets, trimming their power, suppressing marriages outside, noble blood, even engineering ugliness into lineages to prevent interbreeding. Lyra's so-called ugliness was engineered, a symbol of isolation. The inheritance wasn't a gift. It was a prison, and Maxon was the key to breaking it. He raised his free hand toward the Sentinel. "We are." Lyra added, "We are evolution." Their voices echoed as one. Override command, Royal Code Omega, bypass hierarchy, rewrite protocol. The Sentinel froze mid-strike. Its eyes flickered. And then, protocol accepted. It collapsed too, its knees with a thunderous boom, stone splitting beneath it. The lights in its eyes dimmed. A long metallic groan filled the chamber as its body shut down. Silence followed, then Lyra gasped. "We did it!" Maxon collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. The energy inside him began to settle, no longer wild, but calm, like a river finding its course. Lyra knelt beside him, her hand on his chest. "They'll come now. The Council will want answers." Maxon managed a tired smile. "Let them come. We'll have answers too." A week later, in the Great Assembly Hall, the Galactic Council chamber was filled to the brim, ambassadors, generals, and sovereigns from hundreds of planets. Screens showed footage of the Sentinel's defeat, of Maxon and Lyra standing together, rewriting the ancient codes. The Supreme Chancellor of the Council stood up. "So, what are you, Maxon Solari?" Maxon stood in ceremonial robes, the royal seal now emblazoned proudly on his chest. Lyra stood beside him, not behind, beside. "I'm a human," he said plainly. "From Earth, a planet you laughed at, a people you underestimated." He let that hang in the air. "But I'm also something else now, a bridge between the old and the new." Gasps echoed. The Council squirmed. Maxon continued. "You used the Alistair bloodline to control galaxies. You destroyed their faces, twisted their lineages, and chained their children to power." He glanced at Lyra. "But you forgot one thing. True power doesn't live in bloodlines or birthrights. It lives in choice. And I chose her." Silence. Then Lyra stepped forward. "This ends today. No more forced bonds. No more puppet kings and hollow queens. The royal code is broken, and a new law begins." She looked across the chamber. "You can join us or be replaced. No threats. Just truth." The Council didn't cheer. They didn't clap. But they didn't argue either. They knew the world had changed, and this time humanity led the way. Epilogue. A new dawn on. a floating terrace above the newly united capital city, Maxon and Lyra stood watching the sky. It had been a month since the Sentinel's fall, and now dozens of species worked side by side, rebuilding, rethinking, reforming. Maxon sipped a glass of something sweet and alien. Lyra sat beside him, her feet curled beneath her. "You ever think," she asked softly, "how strange it is that you came here to inherit something you never wanted?" Maxon chuckled. "Yeah, and somehow ended up rewriting an empire." She smiled. "And marrying the ugly daughter of the king." He turned to her. "Lyra, you were never ugly. They just couldn't handle how powerful you looked." Her cheeks flushed a soft violet. "Smooth, Earthman." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the wind. Then Maxon said, "So what now?" Lyra leaned, her head on his shoulder. "Now we build a future neither of our people were allowed to dream about, and in the sky above, where once only fear and power ruled, new stars began to shine." Final lesson. The galaxy had always believed that power came from legacy, control, and fear, but in the end, it was compassion, defiance, and choice that rewrote the stars. The end.